Welcome to the E-commerce Profits Podcast, where we feature top founders and experts in the e-commerce industry and take an in-depth look at the struggles and successes in growing e-commerce brands profitably.
Josh Chin here. I'm the host of the E-commerce Profits Podcast, where we feature top experts and shakers in the e-com industry, and we go behind the scenes of the struggles and successes of growing a brand. Now, this episode is brought to you by Chronos.agency. If you're a direct-to-consumer e-com brand that is ready for next-level growth and to unlock the optimal customer lifetime value through email marketing, Chronos is your company. We've helped hundreds of brands get over $70 million in return from email alone, and our clients get an average of 3,500% ROI from our efforts. We've worked with brands like Truly Beauty, Elias Skin, The Udi, and many more. Now, the next step is to email us at sales@chronos.agency, or you can go to chronos.agency to learn more. Today's guest that I have with me is an incredible gentleman. Jeremiah Allen is an entrepreneur, strategist, advisor, owner, and operator of multiple agencies, and investor in e-commerce brands. He has been driving the growth of e-commerce companies since 1997. Before the internet was even cool, and when I was, I think, 1 year old. Outside of work, Jeremiah is a husband, father, and outdoor lover. Jeremiah, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's fun to be here.
And we'll dive straight into it. So we were chatting a little bit before this, and we learned that you actually run 6 organizations concurrently at right now, not counting the ones that are at kind of a startup stage. My question to you is, how do you begin to kind of think about managing your time and energy across all 6 different, organizations?
That's a good question. Organizations have this kind of demand on entrepreneurs. They want everything to be, organizations think that everything is really, really important and has to be done immediately. And I found that if I allow organizations and teams to tell me what's most important, I never get anything done. You go from one problem to the next problem to the next problem, and everything seems really urgent, and you burn out. And so a long time ago, I had to make the decision that I was going to be in charge of what I thought was important and do those things. And what's interesting is that the things that are most important to me actually have nothing to do with the organizations that I run. They have to do with my family. They have to do with my my personal life and other things along those lines. And so by really deciding that those things, I don't start work until 11 o'clock my time every day, and that's because there are a number of things I do either personally or with my family in the mornings that I've just decided have to come first. And by putting those things in their proper frame, I show up at work already having done the things that are most important to me for the day. And so now I can show up at work and have a great conversation with you on a podcast, right? Or work with customer support problems that are happening in an e-com that I help run or something like that, And so I think that if I were to say that the key to being able to run multiple organizations is to really know what's important to you and force everything kind of into its proper place. The reason why I don't run 10 organizations right now is because 6 is all that I can manage within those things that are important to me. And it just comes down really, I think, to hiring the right people, partnering with the right people that have the right skill sets and knowing what you're really good at. What I'm really good at is driving marketing growth. I'm not good at product development. I'm not good at customer service. I'm not good at building websites, right? So I literally focus on the things that I know I'm really good at to the exclusion of everything else. And sometimes that turns into a negative, but because I've got my priorities arranged in the way that I do, there's bound to be some negatives somewhere, and you just live with them and you deal with them and you hopefully can overcome them. I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's, personally, it's super interesting to kind of learn about because, like I mentioned, just building one agency and operating one agency is driving me nuts already on its own. It feels like I never stop working. And so that's super insightful. Talking about kind of what's important in your life and your life in general. So this conversation is going to go kind of all over the place, but it's just going to be what's interesting. At the age of 19 to 20, you mentioned you were in Brazil on a missionary trip.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
Great question. So I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And as a church, we believe in service. We believe in helping others. We believe in the importance of families. And so I had the opportunity when I was 19 to go and spend 2 years working with people in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, where I just got to do so many wonderful things. I met so many people, had lots of service opportunities, worked to strengthen families, shared some of our religious beliefs with people. And what was really neat, and I think something that helped and benefited me a lot, is I learned through that experience that by focusing on others and their needs and really trying to serve and be helpful in every way that I could, it prepared me for a lifetime of, for my career of serving people, helping people. Because really running an agency, running an e-commerce company, whatever you do, if you really are focused on the needs of others and identifying what those most important needs are, and really being able to help them and attend to those needs, it makes all the difference. It strengthens relationships with clients, with customers, and it makes you feel good too. And I learned as a missionary that if I would just kind of forget myself and go to work and serve others, it was so incredibly rewarding. And fortunately, I've been able to take a lot of that belief into my life, not just in a religious way, but with career, with everything. And I just go around looking for opportunities to be helpful, right? And it's worked out. I don't know if that's a magic formula, but really, if you just look for the helpers, you're going to find people who are worth aligning with, I think. But it was a great time. I loved Brazil, loved the people of Brazil. I would love to take my family there one day. I've been back once since my missionary service, and it's a great place. They're struggling with a lot of things right now. My heart goes out to the people there and good friends that I still have there. But yeah. Go Brazil.
That's incredible. That's incredible. So that was I guess one of the more pivotal moments in your life.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your philosophy and in your agencies in service, and obviously you carry that same philosophy to the brands that you build. But what makes you different from my perspective is that you're not just an agent, you're not just an agency, you're also a principal. You have brands that you're growing at the same time. So that gives you a really unique perspective on what's, the realities of growing a brand and the struggles of growing a brand versus what it's like coming from the outside looking in and being kind of like a strategist, looking at the big picture. So tell me a little bit about how you kind of shift in your mindset between the two when you were working on the brand versus on someone else's brand.
That's
or is there
a great
no
question.
difference?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And what's interesting is there actually is no shift. I work with them all in exactly the same way in everything I do. And I think this is one of the things that allows me to manage multiple organizations at any given time is I look for the single most important thing that I can do to drive growth, right? Because I don't worry about, I worry about building the website or things like that, but I'm not doing it. So I'm always looking for, in any organization, if I'm working as an advisor to like, for example, I was on a call just yesterday with one of the companies that I advise, and we were working to identify the single most important thing we can do to increase their profit per order, right? Which is a great way to drive growth for a company. And so we talked about all sorts of different things until we came to the thing that we decided was the most important. I think a lot of people make the mistake of having 30 things that are the most important. But really, the way that you make actual measurable growth is by beginning and completing really important things. And so I'll identify, if I step in as an advisor, or if I'm looking at one of my companies or whatever, I try and find that single most important thing to move the needle. And then while I don't ignore everything else, because there are other things that come up that need to be dealt with, that most important thing gets my primary focus for what that job is. So if it's a company that I own or a client that I'm advising or something different, that's just where I start. I once we find that single most important thing, I almost won't let us talk about other things until that thing is done. Once that thing is done, or nearing completion, we're close to the finish line and it's time to start talking about the next thing, then we can, but not to the point where it just detracts from that most important thing. And I'm sure you've seen that. I mean, you run an email agency, right? When you're looking at how to build, and I don't know how you do it, but when I'm trying to drive email growth, for example, I'll look and I'll say, well, what's the most important thing that we can do to take this client from $50,000 a month in email revenue to $75,000 a month in email revenue? And it might be, okay, well, we really need to work on the automated flow sequences, right? Automated sequences are struggling. We've only got 2 welcome series emails and thank you, 1 new customer thank you email. And so I'll go to look and find those things that we can do within the flows to strengthen it. And we figure out what the most important one is. Maybe the welcome series needs to be built out better. And we work on that and work on that and work on that. And then once it's done, we're like, okay, what's the next most important thing? Oh, it's probably having a good sunset flow or a good browse abandon flow or whatever it's going to be, right? And you can really, at least, maybe it's my weakness, but hopefully it's my superpower, is that I can only focus on one thing at a time. And so I just have to make sure I'm focusing on the most important thing every single time.
I think that's a superpower, 100%. I do think that's a superpower. It's so easy to get distracted by the next. It's one thing to get distracted by the next shiny object, but it's also another thing to get distracted by the next shiny problem, which often happens in in an entrepreneur's mind. It's like, oh, solve this problem, then the next and the next. But we often kind of end up in a circle of just, a cycle of problems that don't move us forward significantly.
Yeah. It's easy to come up with problems that will keep us busy, but that won't bring about measurable results. And that's hard.
And I think we're all to some degree addicted. Well, I am for sure addicted to being busy and ticking things off a to-do list or like a checklist. It fuels that dopamine, but it doesn't necessarily move things forward in an impactful way.
It's absolutely addictive. And I think that we all have to kind of abandon that, the demands. Who was it? There was a book I read, Essentialism, by Greg McCowan or something like that, where he basically says that if you're not going to decide what your priorities are, someone else will decide them for you, right? And I love that. And you really do. You've got to say everything we focus on. We make time for the things that are most important to us, or at least we're supposed to, right? And if we're not making time for those important things, then they'll never happen. And I'm as guilty as the next person. I have important things that are truly important to me that just keep getting put off and keep getting put off and keep getting put off. But we've got to have the discipline to find those important things, bring them to the forefront of what we're working on, execute well on them, and determine whether or not they contributed, and then do more of them. So,
as a new brand, just starting out, they found product market fit and they're looking to scale now. What would be a typical order of priorities that brands like that should be looking out for? And what are some common mistakes, where the order is all mixed up?
That's a great question. So we're talking about I just want to make sure I'm talking to the right company here. We're talking about somebody who's, they've identified a product, it's got fit, they're, acquiring customers at some level, profitably. They're ready to grow, but they kind of, there's also a lot of questions that they've got to answers to how to do that and those sorts of things.
Exactly that, yeah.
So in my experience, I've only found 3 ways to actually drive growth. And they come from focusing on new customer acquisition, increasing customer frequency, and increasing your profit per order. anything outside of those three things, it can contribute to growth, but it's not like it's a growth contributor, right? And so I think that the way I do it, at least the approach that I take, is for example, when I advise on a new project. So if I'm advising this hypothetical client, right, that's at this point, I'm going to look with them and I'm going to say, okay, well, how many new customers are we acquiring per month? 100? Okay, great. Let's figure out what we need to do to double that. We're not going to double it overnight. It might take us 3 months. It might take us 6 months. It might take a year. But what do we need to do to double the number of new customers? And the way I'm going to identify that, how to do it, is I'm going to look and see what's working now. If we're getting good new customer acquisition through Facebook ads, then I'm probably going to invest some time and effort into Facebook ads. A lot of times for a small business to go to a medium-sized business, you don't really need to do a lot of new things. You just need to do more of what you're already doing, right? And so you can expand a little bit, like maybe get into Google AdWords or other things like that. But it's not like for a company to go from 100 new customers a month to 1,000 new customers a month, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You've just got to do some work and some optimization and do kind of more of what you're already doing. The next area, customer frequency. So I like to look and I see, okay, well, in a given month, we had 500 orders and that came from 400 customers, right? So I know that each customer is buying 1.25 times in the month. Well, if that's the number, then I'm going to look and I'm going to say, okay, well, what's it going to take for us to get from 1.25 to 1.5, right? And set a goal. And I think it's important to have actual real goals, right? We're going to go from 100 new customers to 200 new customers. We're going to go from 1.25 orders per customer in 1 month to 1.5, right? And then you start looking at, well, what kinds of things can I do to make that happen? And you look for the single most important thing. Maybe it's putting subscriptions in place on your site, or maybe you want to come up with like an accessory of the month club, or a box, like a subscription box that you can send to people, or maybe you can start releasing product more frequently, or maybe you can, there's any number of things that you can do to be able to increase that customer frequency. And a lot of it's going to come down to your email and what you're doing with email and how you're communicating with people, because all of your customers are on your email list, right? And that becomes, in my experience, one of the easiest ways to do it. So working with somebody like you to be able to really optimize that customer conversation, if the brand is coming up with noteworthy things to talk about, then they can come to you. And you've probably seen this. If a company releases one new product a quarter versus if they release one new product a month, the one who releases one new product a month is going to have a lot more to talk about, right? They're going to be able to tease those things. They're going to be able to talk about it, get people excited about it. And then it gets even better if you can get them to start releasing one new product a week, right? Because then you've got weekly something new and exciting to talk about. And as you do those things, as you're releasing, it doesn't need to be like a totally new thing, like outside of your brand and what you do. But you can, if you've got a red one and a blue one, well, go ahead and do a green one, right? Or if you've got, there are all kinds of things that you can do to modify that. And so you just want to, and again, I'm probably going deeper into it than I need to. Your question is, how do I drive the growth? And it's that I look at those three areas: number of new customers, customer frequency, and profit per order. And I identify the most important thing in each of those areas that will drive growth. And then I pick among those things what really is the most important. Maybe the most important has nothing, like there's one project I started working on recently where their customer or their new customer acquisition is actually doing great. They've 5x their number of monthly new customers over the last year. They don't really need a lot of advice there. I'm sure there are ways that I can help them, but it's going well, so I'm not going to mess with it, right? And I looked at their profit per order and it was decent, but what really struggled is that their email was really weak. Maybe around 15% of their revenue was coming from email. And I don't know what you typically see with your clients, but if a client's not doing at least 30% of their revenue through email, I'm not happy, right?
Yep.
And so I saw that as a huge opportunity. I mean, there's a lot of money being left on the table. The company was doing about $80,000 a month when I started with them. And so 15% of that coming from email would have been, I want to say like $12,000. And so by simply working on that for the first 45 days together, we got them after 45 days of hard work, we got it to 28%. So it's not quite to the 30% that I want, but we nearly doubled it, which resulted in another, a little bit of work. That's now another $10,000 to $12,000 a month that they're bringing in, and it's now gotten them really close to the $100,000 a month. So it's like you look and you find that important thing that has to do with one of those three categories, and you work on it, and you just work on it, and you work on it till it's done. I think a lot of entrepreneurs have a problem finishing things. Because there's always something new to do. So when you choose one thing and you work on it till it's done, then you see results. So that's what I would tell this early startup, somebody who's kind of moving from infancy into childhood and adolescence with their company, is really find that thing that you believe is going to be transformational for your company, start it, finish it, measure it, and you're going to have results most of the time. Not everything you touch will turn to gold. Not every initiative will end in success, but you've really got to be able to start something, see it all the way through, and finish it. That's a mistake that I made a lot when I was an early entrepreneur. Is I'd start a thing, and it's like, okay, I'm going to start doing it. And it's going to give me all these great results. Oh, here's this other thing. Let me start it, right? And you never finish a thing.
Guilty.
Does that ever happen to you?
Guilty, 100% guilty. And that resonates so much with me. I think that's such a good just reminder for a lot of people listening, and for myself as well. But what you just mentioned, what you just shared, is so much gold. That is so. It's so simple, but I think people kind of just overcomplicate things a lot of the time, especially with new tools and new apps and new channels coming up. It's very easy to kind of get caught up with, first you got to do Facebook, then Google, and then YouTube, and then email in that order. But often that's not the case. That there's an underlying kind of reason and rationale for why people should do different things.
Exactly.
Trends in e-com. What have you seen in working with so many different companies and driving growth? What is next phase of e-com in 2021?
Good question. I think that everybody always wants to know what the next big thing is. And sometimes we get ahead of ourselves in looking for the next big thing and ignore things that already exist that we should make a big thing. For example, I think if you look at algorithms, the e-commerce world is surrounded by algorithms. Google organic search algorithms, Facebook algorithms, Instagram algorithms, right? All of these algorithms. And when you look at what all of the algorithms are doing, and clearly I don't know exactly what they're trying to do because I'm not the engineer or team of engineers who's coding them. But it seems to me that most algorithms focus on delivering the best possible user experience. So Google's algorithms for organic search focus on getting somebody, when somebody searches something on Google, they're really asking a question. And so Google's whole goal is to serve up the results that are going to provide the best answer to those questions, right? And the same thing with Facebook. When they're showing ads, they want to show ads that are relevant to people. They want to show people ads that deliver value and that introduce them to products that are going to make their lives better. And so I think the next big thing is really a thing that we've needed to focus on all along, which is providing massive value to people. Even if it's, so a lot of one of my companies that I own is a baby shoe company. We make leather moccasins, soft-soled shoes for babies, for early walkers, toddlers, that kind of thing. And one of the things that we've learned along the way is that we charge a lot of money for our shoes. Like you could go and buy 6 pair of shoes at Target for the amount that we charge for 1 pair of shoes, right? And so if we're going to charge that amount of money effectively, we've got to be able to communicate that value to people. So my job as a marketer becomes communicating the value, the quality of the leather, how it's soft, how you're going to get a ton of compliments if your baby wears these shoes, how they're recommended by pediatricians because they're going to provide for the best possible foot growth, pediatric foot growth, right? And all these kinds of things. I, as a marketer, have to be able to communicate those things. And if I am incapable of communicating value through ads, for example, I'm not going to survive. If you look at Facebook ads right now, it seems like on the different client projects that I work on, it seems like those clients where we're able to effectively communicate value and where we're regularly producing new ads that communicate that value, we're doing well. But the projects that struggle are those where either I or the client or whoever it is, right, is struggling to communicate that value, and they're just like hitting people over and over and over with salesy messaging. Hey, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, right? Or talking about how great the product is instead of talking about what value it's going to deliver to you, the customer, right? And so I feel that in a world, an e-commerce marketing world that's dominated by algorithms, what we have to do is we have to give those algorithms, if we want visibility, if we want exposure, we have to give the algorithms what they want. And what the algorithms want, whether they know it or not, is to deliver experiences to people that people are going to engage with. And the best way I know to do that is by delivering and communicating value. So I think if I had to say the next big thing for 2021, it'd probably be that, figuring out how to appropriately, effectively, and like with enthusiasm, communicate value to your prospective customers. Because when that's there, it's hard to fail. You're probably going to succeed.
And it's evergreen. That doesn't change with algorithms.
Yeah. I mean, if you did it 10 years ago, you were going to have growth. If you did it 2 years ago, you were going to have growth. And unless something like drastically changes, it's something that you can always safely work on. Like, it's never bad to invest in communicating value.
This reminds me of a conversation I had, a guest that I had on, Justin Christensen from Conversion Fanatics. Go check out that episode if you guys haven't. But what he mentioned on that conversation with me was he's seeing a shift. So he runs a conversion rate optimization agency, and he does amazing work.
Yeah, some of my clients use them. They seem to do good work.
He is one of the most passionate conversion rate optimization nerds I've ever seen and spoken to. Very cool dude. And what he's seeing is that kind of that shift from CRO alone, from conversion optimization to experience optimization. And I think that really echoes what you're saying here.
Absolutely.
Seeing things from a bigger picture and how people are experiencing value from the brand versus just making that conversion happen is so important.
Well, what's important, talking about conversion rate optimization is it actually begins, I believe, and nothing against doing it on the site, because you need to do it on the site too, but it begins off of the site. It begins by creating the experience, with that first social media ad or whatever it is, right? Influencer post or, third-party endorsement in an email or something like that, where an expectation begins to be set. Once, from the moment a prospective customer comes in contact with your brand, I think they're asking questions already. What's in this for me? What is this, right? Are they just trying to sell me something? We have so much skepticism that until we find companies where there's something that really stands out or where we really have belief in them, we don't care. And so conversion rate optimization on site is so important. But one of the best ways I've found to do that effectively is to simply align the site with the expectation that people have when they get there, right? They have an expectation before they come to your site. And if they get there and your site isn't congruent with that expectation, they're going to hit the back button and leave every single time. Well, 80% of the time, right? Yeah. Which means you've got a huge bounce rate, which is horrible, which means you need somebody to help with your CRO. And really, the CRO, while it is important to tweak your buttons and change your layout and adjust your testimonials and that sort of thing, really what you need to do is you've got to work on that experience and creating. If you don't have a good experience before somebody gets to the site, then you're already going to have trouble getting people there. But if you've got a good experience off site, you want that to continue once people get there, so that because you're trying to persuade them that you're presenting them with an aspirational identity. You're saying there's something that's missing from your life, right? here, let me fill this gap in your life. Maybe your kid just needs some cute shoes, right? That's still a need that you have, right? Nobody wants not cute shoes for their baby. And people, moms worry about the pictures that they take and post on Instagram. They worry about, they compare themselves to influencers, right? Moms all over the world worry that they're not good enough. And they compare themselves against what they see on social media. And so one of the things that we do with our baby brand is we tell the mom that they are good enough. And we talk about real moms and how it's hard to be a real mom. And right, we have a whole dialogue with moms about things that have nothing to do with shoes. We have a reel that we posted on our Instagram, I don't know, a month ago, 2 months ago, where my partner, co-founder, well, she was the founder and then I bought the company. Anyhow, whatever. So her name's Annie. And Annie does this video where she gives a tip about how she makes chicken nuggets for her kids to take to lunch. She hates making sandwiches for her kids for lunch. So what she does is while they're eating breakfast, she puts a little tray of chicken nuggets in the oven, bakes the chicken nuggets, and then puts them in a little small thermos so they stay warm and sends them with her kids for lunch, right? We posted it. The thing got 750,000 views like that, right?
Wow.
Of all these moms, like, I don't know what it is, but the internet needed this video about chicken nuggets and how much of a drag it is to make sandwiches for your kid that's going away to school, right? And so because we talk about things that allow us to connect with these moms, because moms are our primary customer, we're able to connect with these moms at an emotional level and set an expectation that we're like them. That our products are Annie and they are sisters, right? So there's this level of trust, and we introduce the shoes to them. They're like, oh, those are really cute. Because, we're expensive. And so when they get to the site, if they're going to get to the site and be like, oh my gosh, you're selling baby shoes for more than pretty much anybody else out there is selling baby shoes, there's got to be something to back that, right? The value has to be communicated. The experience has to be there. And you wouldn't pay that much money to buy a pair of shoes from Target. Well, guess what? You also don't have the relationship with Target that you have with this brand. And so it is experience. And you got me off on this huge tangent. I apologize for going so far down.
No, I love it. This is good.
You're exactly right. It's the experience, and the experience begins with what you're communicating far before they ever come to your site.
Beautiful. What other brands have you seen that does a good job in what you just described in creating good experience and communicating that value?
Good question. A couple of them. One I think does a great job is called Live Bearded. They do like beard products. I'm friends with the guys who run that company. If you've never interviewed them for your podcast, I think they'd be great to pull on. Let me know. I'll give you an intro.
I would love to. Yeah.
So they do a really good job. There's a company that does Guatemalan handbags that I've advised off and on over the years. They're not currently a client, but it's called Nena and Co. NENAANDCO.com. They do these beautiful Guatemalan handbags and actually bags from other places too. They're really known for their Guatemalan stuff. They do an excellent job of forming that relationship with people on social media before they ever get to the site. Let me think. I'm just trying to think across some different industries. There's a company in the mindfulness space. I know you guys know them, but it's called the Ohm Store, TheOhmStore.co. They do a really good job of communicating what's in it for someone aside from their products. Like they have a whole mission to bring light into people's lives and help people eliminate the mental clutter and distractions and those kinds of things. And like they really make an effort in everything they post to communicate that to people. And they end up, they're making really strong promises to people. They're basically promising people that they will change their lives, that using their products can absolutely change their lives. They're bold promises, right? But the thing is that they do everything they can then to help people change their lives through use of their products. And we have a shared Slack channel because we work together. And on their shared Slack channel, they post these testimonials they get, several a day of like, and they don't put all of their testimonials into the shared Slack channel. They just put the great ones. And there are literally 2 or 3 or 4 every single day of people who are like, oh my gosh, this absolutely changed my life, right? Like the people believed that it was possible. They bought the product. They believed that it could bring about change in their life, and it changed their life, and they just celebrate it. And I mean, I get reviews for my baby shoes, but nothing like this. You know, it's just they pour in of all these reviews of you changed my life. If you're like stressed, if you're watching this and you're stressed, check out their website. They've got these singing bowls that are, they're handmade in Nepal by artisans, and you play them, and it just gives this resonance. Have you ever tried one of them? One of their bowls?
I haven't.
Oh
I
my
have
gosh,
not.
you've got to order one.
I definitely now I definitely have to get my hands on one of those.
You totally do. It can change your life. I have one. It hasn't changed my life because I don't use it every single day. I don't use it the way they say you should. For me, it's just this beautiful thing that sits on a shelf in my home, and it's gorgeous. And every now and then one of my kids takes it down and bangs on it and makes a lot of noise. I tell them to put it away. And then sometimes once a month or so, I'll pull it off the shelf and play it for a minute. I'm like, oh, that's really nice. I should really use this more. And then I put it away and move on, right? I'm not one of the it changed my life testimonials, but it's absolutely beautiful. The quality is incredible. And I can see how it would change somebody's life if they were more disciplined than me. Anyhow.
Amazing.
Any others? Let me think. Any other brands that really do a good job of it? Well, you can check out my baby shoe brand. It's Nomies, Nomies.com. There are certainly things we can work on and do better. But I think that brand also does a good job. So those are probably some that are lesser known that I'd have you start looking.
Amazing. I love these examples. Because it's kind of these, when a brand gets to a certain scale and size, when it has to kind of go for the wide masses, it's very difficult to have a single unified persona that still resonates with people. And I think that's one of the struggles that, Allbirds, interestingly, is going through. They're now facing the decision of going for an IPO, and one of the promises to investors is that they're going to go mass market. But the only way that they're going to be able to go to mass market is if they found a strong enough positioning that appeals to beyond that, the sustainability environmentalist crowd and the tech crowd. I find it super interesting. Have you ever seen kind of a shift in customer personas along the journey of a brand's evolution?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people try and do it, and it's hard. It really is hard. And it's a question that brands have to ask is, are we okay building a company that's just $10 million a year because it only, because we've kind of saturated that market of who really is, right? And me personally, as an entrepreneur, I would rather have 5 $10 million a year brands, right, than one $100 million a year brand. Even though it's twice the revenue, I'd rather have the 5 that are working, that are really serving the needs and are able to have that really good connection. I find that connection really is one of the most important things. Being able to have that authenticity and that good feeling with people. And it is somewhere around the time that you hit 10 or $20 million a year, you've got to answer the question of, okay, now how do I take this thing that I've been selling to my people, my tribe, right? And now sell it to everyone. And that's a hard thing because not every product has mass appeal. And so sometimes the very thing that took the company from startup to 20 million a year is now called into question because it's now viewed as a limiting factor, where really it's like the heart and soul of the brand. I always try and resist that change, not because I'm not thinking big, but it's just so much work. It's so hard to get it right. And there have been so many times I've seen it tried and failed, where it just, once you try being something you're not, it often turns into a death spiral for a brand. And I'm not saying it's every single time, but I would say that instead of doing that kind of thing where you reinvent the brand, I would simply work on finding the kinds of relationships that will expand the audience. Because there are people, we think we can reach everybody on Facebook, but the reality is there are a lot of other ways to reach people. And so I would rather, instead of saying this product that right now only appeals to a small number of people, right? Instead of saying it's got to now appeal to everyone, I'd rather say, well, how can we find twice as many of this small number of people? Because they're out there and you can usually find them. And yes, you'll reach saturation. A perfect example, I've got a guy that I've mentored for several years now. His name's Bernardo Faria. He's a 5-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion. And he, a couple of years ago, started a company. Once he, retired from professional fighting, he started a company that teaches Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's got like all these info products, right, that he sells. And what he does is he goes and he shoots videos with the current world champions and the current top fighters and kind of teaches people about this. But when I first started talking to him years ago, his company was doing about a fifth of the monthly revenue that it is now. And
Wow.
And he was worried that he was already kind of reaching market saturation. Because there's not that many people that practice Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I mean, it's cool and all, but how many people like actually practice Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? And and so, fast forward, I don't know how many years, 4, 5, I don't know how long I've known Bernardo. I should be ashamed for not knowing, but here now, about 5 years later, at that point, he was like, I don't know, what am I going to do when I reach the top, when I can't grow anymore. And he's been able to consistently do more and more and more and more. And then what he did, he's still not at saturation. There's still more room for him to grow, although he's making a pile of cash. He's doing very, very well with it. So what he's done next is he started building out other areas. So not just Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but now he's teaching all kinds of other, fighting styles, other sports, different things like that. And so he's kind of going down the path of, instead of trying to turn his thing into something that will appeal to everyone, he's now just creating knockoffs of his own thing for all these other markets, which to me is a lot smarter than like with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Do you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu personally?
I don't, unfortunately.
Right. I mean, it's probably pretty cool, but it would be me trying to come to you and force you and convince you that you need to buy a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu video.
Oh, that's a tough claim, yeah.
It would be hard because you don't do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You might consider it maybe because it's cool, but it's going to be so much harder to get you to buy Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is like saying, okay, well, now Allbirds has to appeal to everyone, right?
Yeah.
When really there are probably other activities that you are interested in. Maybe you like rock climbing or whatever it is that you do. Well, that's great. Let's find a product that you want. It's that whole product market fit question. Can you identify a market, figure out what their need is, and deliver a product or service that's going to meet that need? And yeah, everybody has a need for shoes, but I'm not an Allbirds kind of guy, right? Like, I think they're great, but they don't look like they'd be comfortable to me. I'm never going to buy Allbirds, right? And it has nothing to do with how I feel about the company or their policies or their practices. I recognize that they've done a lot of good, and they probably make a good quality product, but I'm not going to buy them, right? Taking a mass market isn't going to reach me. So you get me talking. Like, I talk way too much. I should probably listen to you more.
No, I love this. This is great. I think that's a super unique perspective that comes with, I would say, I value your perspective way more than I do mine, because you come with 20 years of over plus years of experience in the space.
Well, you're kind. I appreciate your humility, but really I'm just like everybody else.
But it's true. I mean, the thing is, lots of brands go through the evolution of kind of, a good example is, we used to work with a ton of dropshipping clients during the dropshipping boom. We don't anymore, but we have seen lots of brands lots of dropshipping businesses attempt to transform into a brand. And even though a dropshipping business doesn't necessarily have a strong brand identity aside from get a cool, trendy, fun-looking product,
Right.
It still is a transformation in how they position themselves as a company, as a brand, and how they sell. And the number of brands that actually made that transition, that leap, were, well, it's less than 10. They're still clients of ours today, and the rest of them basically went out of business. But the thing is that of those brands that actually made that leap, they're one of our best. They're our best clients right today. They run amazing brands that are super high quality, super happy customers, way different from what they used to be, and they're doing extremely well once they've made that leap. So on one hand, I'm seeing that there's that survivorship bias where when you look at the brands that have succeeded in doing so, it's incredible. But for those who fail, it's a complete kind of opposite of just decimation. So it's that risk of, do we want to take the risk of complete decimation for something that seems incredible?
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because like with dropshippers becoming brands, or I end up working with a lot of people who are on Amazon that want to build out their own Shopify store, right?
Yep.
And it's a different game. It really is. Like I have no business running an Amazon store. It's not where my strength is. But I get these Amazon merchants who come to me and they're like, okay, well, what do we want? What do we do? We're terrified of Amazon, right? And so they want to build their own brand. And it's a completely different game. There are a lot of questions that you have to answer along the way. And I assume that that's what your dropshipping clients had to do, is they had to answer questions about who they were going to be, how they were going to relate to people, what's their appeal, who their market actually is, things that they were already answering at some level when they were dropshipping. But when you're building a brand, you're trying to build like a relationship with people, a long-term relationship where you're like giving them things and fulfilling their lives and making emotional contributions to them. They got to feel good in order to keep wanting to use your stuff. And there are so many questions that have to be answered along the way. And it's interesting that you bring up, survivorship bias. And that's true. It's easy. It's easy to look at those winners, and that's what everybody always talks about on podcasts and everything. It's like, oh, here's the success. It should be so easy, right? And so we watch it and we're like, well, they don't even seem like they're that smart. How did they, But having that experience that you and I have gained by working kind of in a services capacity where you see the companies who fail, you're like, oh, wow, that's why they failed. Oh, they didn't have strong financials. Oh, they didn't have a good supply chain. Oh, you see all the reasons. And there are so many questions you have to answer in a quest for e-commerce profits. In that you've got to, man, it's so hard. There's so many things. When I first started my own e-commerce company that I purchased the baby shoe one, I know a ton about driving growth, but there are all the other questions I had to answer along the way, and they nearly killed me, right? And it's hard. And man, anyhow, so you're right to say that survivorship bias is a thing where we're like, we see things and it just like, it becomes clear what should have been done, but sometimes there's more lessons to be learned from all the failures. And so as people are going along, I would encourage your listeners that as they go along and they're having failures, to let those be learning opportunities and really be stepping stones to success. And there does come a time where you've got to, hang it up and say, no, this isn't working. I got to support my family. I'm going to go back to getting a job or whatever it is. But the reality is failure is a major educator and can really help people along the way. And that's how you end up with these stories that it's like, wow, where did this company come from? They made $100 million overnight, right? When really they've been working their guts out and not taking a paycheck for the last 6 years, right? It's hard.
Now, to wrap things up, what is your one best advice if you only had to choose one, if you could only choose one for a younger Jeremiah, like say when you were 21 years old, fresh out of your missionary trip in Brazil?
I would tell myself, figure out what matters and doesn't matter, because most of it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. When financing falls through, it doesn't matter. When the company implodes, it doesn't matter. When you lose your job, it doesn't matter. Like, none of those things matter. They just don't matter. The number of things that actually matter in your life are so much. There's so many. There's so few compared to all of the things that don't matter. And so what I would tell 21-year-old Jeremiah is, man, most of it doesn't matter. And that doesn't mean that you like just check out from all of it, but you've got to have the perspective of what matters and what doesn't matter. Because in the moment, everything seems like it matters. I got sued once, and it consumed me. And it was like this crazy, horrible thing, right? And I ended up settling it 18 months later for $2,000, right? and so like all of this time and energy and effort and stress, right, that I was subjected to, I didn't know that it didn't matter. And so if I had instead doubled down on the things that do matter, and yeah, I'm not saying ignore the other things, you've got to deal with the other things, right? But they don't matter. And so if you'll take some time on a Sunday afternoon out in nature or in a place that brings you peace or with God or whatever you believe in, and like figure out what really matters to you. And I'm telling you, like, those number of things fit on one hand, probably, right? Figure out what those things are that actually matter and pursue those with all of your passion, and let the other things not matter and deal with them, because you got to deal with them. You got to have a job, you got to have a company, you got to have all these things. But they then become secondary, and they don't drain from you. They don't suck the life out of you because they don't matter. And so you don't empower them to. The only things that you acknowledge and allow to matter in your life are the things that can have power over you, and the other things can't. So that's what younger me needed to know, is that most of it doesn't matter. So there you go.
It sounds like what a lot of people need to know. I think that's a good reminder for me as well. I mean, I'm learning so much just chatting with you in this.
Oh, you're so kind.
It's a lot of just wisdom that comes with, I would guess, experience and just time and thought. So one last question. One last question. I know I did say the last one, but this one for sure, I promise. If you had a billboard on the biggest, busiest highway in America, what would that billboard say?
Oh my goodness!
Stealing this from got this idea from Tim Ferriss on this podcast. I love this question because it kind of just gives us a glimpse into what's most important.
I think it would say, "Give thanks." Give thanks. Give thanks. I think that in our world today, a lot of what's wrong comes from a lack of gratitude that we have. And I include myself in that accusation. The times that I get the most caught up in social upheaval, in perceived injustices against me, viruses, plagues, pandemics, right? All of the things around me, the things that want to try and, murder me, basically, or at least it feels like. When I remember that if I'm there's so much goodness that I do have in my life. And I'm not just talking about now that I've kind of arrived at I don't want to say I'm like at the top or anything like that, but I'm fine. My life is good. But all throughout my life, even in points when I had nothing, when I would stop and find the things that I could be grateful for, it was transformational for me. And so I think that if I could pass along a message to everybody on that busiest highway, I think I would put up the words "give thanks," because everybody, no matter who they are, has something that they can be grateful for. And there's power in that gratitude. That's a lesson that I learned in Brazil. Is I worked with incredibly poor people many times, people who I don't even want to try and explain it, like the poorest people you've ever met, right? And and there were some of them who taught me that lesson powerfully, is that even though they had nothing, sorry, I'm trying to not get choked up here, absolutely, literally nothing. They found those things that gave them joy, getting a soccer ball and playing out in the road with their kid or things like that. And they just had this gratitude about them that was unlikely for their circumstance. And they were some of the happiest people I've ever met. And so that would be the message. I've tried to internalize that throughout my life, is give thanks to whatever it is that you give thanks to, right? God, the universe, or even just to like nothing. Just be grateful, right? Yeah, there you go. So tell Tim that's what I would say on my billboard.
Thank you, Jeremy. Right. That was amazing. And if people listening are interested to connect with you, learn more about what you do, where should they go to connect with you?
They can send me a text, 801-870-0556. My email is Jeremiah, Jeremiah, at fatbullfrog.com. Those are the two best ways to get in touch with me.
Jeremiah, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you coming on the show. And have a good rest of your day.
It was good. See you later, brother.
Thanks for listening to the eCommerce Profits Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get notified of future episodes.